So this is a nice and simple introduction into rent to rent. If you don't know what it's all about, this is just going to give you a brief explanation and show you sort of how the process works. So how does it work if you're a complete newbie? This is pretty important to know. So essentially, you're renting a property from a landlord or agent. You're then going to design and furnish the property, preferably with high spec stuff. It doesn't have to be top notch. It obviously depends on your target market, but you're going to get it ready and make sure it's fit to the fire safety regulations, which is a fairly new thing that's coming. There's more information about that online, or I will cover if you decide to work with us. But essentially, interlinked smoke alarms, fire extinguishers, fire blankets, emergency exit lights, things like this. Doesn't cost too much, but it needs to be done for you to be a legit company, essentially. So once you've got your property and you've done all of that work to it, you will list that property on Airbnb and other booking platforms and turn over for a profit. Profits vary depending on where you are in the UK. London will have higher profits, but most of the other parts, you can average anywhere between £1,000 to £2,000 profit per unit per month. Obviously, it can be way more. It can also be less. Very rarely is it less than that, but you've always got to consider the worst case as well. And then once you've got your property up and running, you can use that cash to do whatever you want with. I would recommend using it to reinvest and keep building your own property portfolio. So, how to get started? I would always advise training. Always advise training of some sort, because there are so many different things that you may come across and you won't know how to deal with it. Obviously, you can always try and sort it yourself, but it's for the time and money you will spend making mistakes, it's going to pay you back tenfold if you just pay somebody that has already been through the journey you're going to take and can help you along the way. So, training aside, this is what you do. You set up a limited company. You don't want to do this yourself, just tax benefits. So, using the SIC code 68209, you set up your company. You get yourself a logo created that matches the name you've set the company up in. Open a business bank account. You can try and go for one of the big names, but honestly, a lot of the online banks are really easy. There's not too much verification and stuff, so you can typically have one open within 24 hours. Then you're going to create a professional domain, so just a simple landing page that states what you do as a management company and also a professional email address, so rather than using Gmail or anything like that. Once your company's formed, you've got the bank account and all that sort of stuff, you're going to get a public liability and professional indemnity insurance. This is just to make sure that you're all above board. And then you begin your property search, focusing on direct to vendor. If you don't know what that means, it means direct to the landlord rather than using a third party like a property agent or something. Now, property agents aren't out of the realm of possibility, but they are typically harder to get in with, especially if you're just starting out and you have no sort of track record. They're probably not going to look twice at you. So it's easier to go direct to landlord while you build the portfolio. And then once you've got some under your belt, go to agents. They're very hard to get through to, but they also have a huge stockpile of properties that come through the door. So if you can get in with a good agent, it's definitely worth your time. So which areas will work? A lot of people ask about this and they're not sure if their area will work. And there's so many different ways of checking. A lot of people make it real scientific. And to be honest, I don't think it needs to be like that. I think keep it simple because it just saves confusion, especially when you're new to this. And look at these factors here. So if you're going for a holiday let, if you're somewhere that is classed as a holiday destination, Peak District, Lake District, any beachfront towns, anything like that, city breaks even, that's fine. But if you're targeting that market, the holiday market, you're going to need extras. Like, you can't just have the property, you're probably going to want a games room of some sort, maybe a hot tub. All of these things that is not an issue having them, but it's obviously extra investment to consider and extra upkeep to make sure that they stay in good condition. So that's for holiday destinations. Cities that show growth and development, like bigger cities, are always going to work. So such as Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, Sheffield, not bad. Nottingham, obviously that's a good one. All these areas where they're growing out from the city, they're always going to be good, because there's always going to be upgrade works or ongoing developments and that kind of thing. So a good way to tell if a city has got like good growth or is a substantial city is that it'll have a decent rated university and hospital. That's a good way of knowing if it's going to be okay. If it's like more of a village and it doesn't really have a university or anything like that, it's probably not going to work. Could work as a holiday destination, but that's where we come into the next step, which is it shows a market on Airbnb. So if you're considering working in an area, one of the easiest things to do to check if there's demand there is just go on to Airbnb and search for properties in the area that you're thinking about. And if it brings up 20 odd Airbnbs, all in a close location, chances are that it does actually work there. So if that's the case, you've just got to make sure that your property is a step above the rest. And that's essentially it. It's not too difficult. So common pitfalls when you're getting started are a lack of confidence when speaking to property owners. And that's whether it's over message, over the phone, or you're on a viewing, the same applies. And this is why we give scripts to students, just to give them the best possible chance. Because if you're just winging it, there's no harm in that. Like if you want to go for it, then power to you. But you're gonna come across potential issues that you didn't consider, and the only problem with that is that you risk losing a good landlord because you're not prepared. So that's definitely an important one. If you want to practice, maybe book some viewings on houses that you're not really keen on, and then you're not going to be too bothered if you do mess something up and it doesn't work out for the best. Fear of failure and rejection is a huge one, because there's a housing crisis in England. There's always going to be properties going up and down real quick, and you're going to get a lot of rejection along the way. If a property pops up and you send them a message, you've got to think you're probably the 50th person that's messaged that landlord. So you can't let it get you down. It's a numbers game, and the best thing you can do is just not let any rejection get you down. Keep going, keep plodding forward, and eventually it's going to come good. If you let it knock your confidence, then you're setting yourself up for failure, because it's going to have a knock-on effect, and you're going to stop putting in the effort because you feel disheartened, and you're not going to get anywhere ultimately. Not conducting due diligence correctly. This is basically checking the property figures, working out if the pricing is going to work. Like if you can actually turn a profit. You'll always turn a profit, but turn out a good enough profit to make it worth your while. So checking the numbers and making sure that your property is actually up to spec for the other properties in the area. Super, super important. And similar sort of thing, like if you're renting an apartment, most apartments will have a head lease, which basically the management company of the building that the apartment is in will have their own rules. And people have lost a lot of money by setting up an Airbnb in an apartment block that doesn't allow it, because they'll spend £10,000 setting it up, and then later down the line, the management company of the block will realise that that's illegal, and they'll kick you out, and you've got no choice. So yeah, it's super important, due diligence. And low spec properties, again, just making sure that your property is good enough to compete with the rest of the market. It's no good just putting any property on Airbnb. It's not going to work. You have to have something that catches the eye of a potential guest. So these are the most basic options in the Airbnb industry. So the first one, if you've got money but you don't have time, or maybe you just don't want to put the time into it, then you invest for a management company. So you'll put all of the money in for a deal and use a management company to take care of the day-to-day. This is the most hands-off approach, but it will produce the lowest returns because whatever profit you are getting, a percentage of that is going to be going to the management company. So let's say you were standing to make £1,500 a month, you're probably only going to make £1,000 a month because the management company is obviously taking a fee. So yeah, it's a good investment opportunity. If you don't have time but want to make your money work for you, definitely recommend it. If you want to maximise your profits, then option 2 is probably the best, and that is your own rent-to-rent business, which is what I've done and what all of my clients have done. Now, this uses your own money and your own management, so you yield the highest returns, but it also leaves you in charge of the management, which everybody thinks is going to be a full-time job. It's not once you've got the right systems in place. It's not too difficult at all. You can build the business exactly how you want to build it. And then there's management for others. So this typically would come after setting up your own rent-to-rent business. A lot of people start out just doing their own rent-to-rent business, and then they start managing properties for investors, whether that be just all-in investors or joint venture partners. So this option requires typically no financial input from you. You'll simply manage properties on behalf of investors. You'll receive lower returns, but you'll have no skin in the game. So the rent and bills of the property will be the investor's responsibility. So all you do is manage it and, send the profits over and then charge your fee on top. You don't, if there's no bookings, you don't lose any money on that. So yeah, it's a risk-free option, and it's a great way to top up your income. So the financials, this is the final part of this slide because it's just an introduction. So to start your own rent-to-rent business, for me, you want to have £10,000. You can do it with less, 100% you can do it with less. That allows a little safety cushion. And it allows you to not have to skimp on the expenses of furniture and stuff, which it's not something you want to do. You don't want to skimp on expenses. So you can get your property up and running to a high enough standard with 10k. You can also do it with less, but that's just my recommendation. Off the top of my head, it would be achievable with 5,000. It really would, depending on your area. But yeah, 10k is the sweet spot. So the average property will make between £1,000 and £2,000 profit per month, giving you a return on investment of between 6 and 12 months. Obviously, all dependent on the area, seasons, standard of your property, the due diligence you've carried out, which obviously if you're working with us, that'll be on point anyway. And the typical lease period is typically 3 to 5 years. So this allows for the potential future profits of anywhere from £24,000 to £48,000, even more. Which is obviously, it's really good. It is very good because once you've got this all systemized, it's going to take very little time for you to spend on the business. You can work a full-time job whilst having a rent-to-rent business in the background. A lot of people don't. They do this to get out of the full-time job and then, build the portfolio from there and start venturing down different property paths, whether that be HMO conversions or BRRs, whatever it is. There's so many different options, and this is a great stepping stone to help you reach your property goals.